Hello and welcome to the Gooners podcast. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I love surprising you with our start times, but snowed in today. I know
I saw that you guys got some snow.
You live in the Denver area, so snow's nothing new to you. But we got about 8 inches yesterday, aka a half Ola. And I'm voluntarily.
You're stuck at the house.
I'm voluntarily stuck in. I mean, I could get out if I wanted to, but I kind of feel like with Arsenal, I'm kind of stuck in place. So I figured it would be suitable for me to stay in place today. But
if 8 inches of snow dropped in Denver, that just is another day.
That's called Tuesday. Yeah, no, I know.
But it's gone by Wednesday, so we just they don't even plow the roads here, which makes it even worse.
So let's introduce our guest today. We're very happy to have a returning guest today. His name is Andrew Mangan. Mangan, you may have heard of him. People in the chat room, aka Arseblog, joined us a couple years ago by audio, but he's joining us today from the studio that appears to be much more professional than ours.
Was it years ago?
Almost 2 years ago, actually.
Wow.
I think we had just played a game against West Brom that didn't go so well.
That doesn't narrow it down really at all.
Yeah. Well, it was our first season. Since the time you've come, we've changed our manager. We've changed the name of our podcast. Andy's gotten 48 pedicures. Has a whole portfolio of homes now, mountain homes in Colorado. But what's new with you? What's new in the world of Arseblog?
What's new in the world of Arseblog? I don't know. We're just trying to cope. Do you hear me? But we're trying to deal with a new manager and trying to figure him out and try and figure out what's going on and what his ideas are and everything else. But apart from that, like Arseblog is just chugging along. As long as there's Arsenal to deal with, there'll be Arseblog as well. So
that's the good thing about it. It doesn't really rise and fall with the economy as long as the team exists, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon.
It's like being a funeral director, isn't it? It's always work.
But exactly. Mike, if we all stop going to matches and stop buying merchandise, the team will stop existing. That's from the internet.
Oh yes, no. I think we need to stop buying food on the concourse. And look at me. Am I stopping buying food anytime soon?
Right.
That's the most unrealistic boycott I've ever heard in my life. Still cranking out entertaining Monday and Friday morning podcasts, but you've added a second layer of content, have you not, since our last?
Yeah, we do stuff on Patreon now, which is fantastic because it allows us to do more and to sort of pay our writers more and to give people a bit extra, and people who want to support the site can come and do that. They get extra podcasts and articles and that kind of stuff. So it gives us new stuff to do. It gives people new stuff to listen to, and it just helps us expand the coverage that we have on the site across, not just the first team, but the youth and the Arsenal women and everything else. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, I certainly suggest, if you are not checking it out already, and who would not be checking it out already, certainly check it out. Shout out to the people in chat. I see some new names in there today, no doubt based on a retweet from about an hour ago. And my favorite comment from David Gooners says, "Worth watching as Andrew is on," which I like to look at the converse of that, which is we are never worth watching when Andrew isn't on. But, hey, we'll take it where we can get it. So let's get into this shit. I mean, this season has been... Do we have
to, Mike? Do we have to get into it?
We do. This season's been full of peaks and valleys. We're in a pretty deep valley at the moment, but yeah, I think we kind of do, Andy, a little bit. I mean, let's minimize it so that we have enough time to talk about all the other bullshit that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, so I think West Ham on paper, even though we haven't lost them away for so long, that's always a banana skin, and it's a little, as you know, resonates with me since my entire family are basically Hammers, except for my sister and I. So I always get the barrage of texts after we lose. So I remember it a little bit more, for weeks after. But man, we go play like shit. They put a dent in our top four ambitions, and Mike, where do we start? I think we should start with Lacazette and Aubameyang on the pitch together. I watched a full 90, and I'm not even sure they actually played the full 90 outside of Laka being denied by Fabianski's excellent save. it was almost non-existent that we had two strikers on the pitch. It just.
Yeah, I mean, you like to talk about gaping holes. There's definitely a gaping hole in the midfield, and we'll get to that. But yeah, they were on the pitch. They were definitely on the pitch. You know who wasn't on the pitch? And you know I like to drag us into this, so let's just get to it. Right? Yeah,
here we go.
Yeah. We gotta, we gotta do this. Yeah, Mesut Ozil, Mr. Instagram himself. I mean. I don't know. We'll get into kind of your opinion. And Andy is very pro Ozil. Andrew, I know that you had some interesting takes on him on your podcast both Friday and today. I mean, this cannot go on like this, one way or the other. Whoever's fault you think this is, it can't go on. He's training all week. He's tweeting pictures of himself. He's tweeted pictures of himself today, saying no matter what. I train, go forward. He's playing the PR game pretty hard, but I mean, there's a Daily Mail article. Take it with pounds and pounds and kilograms of salt, especially because it's from Arsenal's best friend, Adam Crafton.
Is he the teacup guy?
Yeah, he's Mr. Right, Teacup.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if it had come from a different source in the Daily Mail, there are some people who are better connected to Arsenal than that guy. I'd maybe read a bit more into it, and I don't really deny that maybe Unai Emery might like to move Mesut Ozil on, but yeah, I don't know about that particular piece. I don't know how well sourced that is.
Andy knows I love to jump at clickbait. It's his biggest problem with me.
Nothing more fucking clickbaity than the Daily Mail, is it?
No, that's pretty much true. But I don't know. I mean, there's. It seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. So again, it's poorly sourced, but it says that Emery's trust in Ozil is non-existent, and I don't think that's a long stretch considering the comments he made after the game about having the players who deserve to be there.
But Mike, how can that be said? And Andrew, jump in here too. Like, how can that be said that there's no trust in him, but when he is back in the squad, he's given the captain's armband? That's why I don't understand how this makes sense. Like, if you have no trust in him, granted, okay, you don't play him, but when you do play him, if it's squad rotation or if he fits the system and style, why are we giving him the captain's armband? That doesn't make sense to me.
What game was it when he came back and wore the captain's armband? It was a home game against Huddersfield.
Yeah, it was just recently. It
was one of those, and I think it's probably a bit more nuanced in the sense that he may well trust him for certain games, for games at home. He clearly doesn't trust him away from home. I mean, he said as much, more or less, that sometimes the games are too physical for him, and this is when we're playing teams that aren't necessarily that physical. He said Bournemouth, who are the least physical team in the Premier League, were too physical for Mesut Ozil. And I think that you have to sort of read between the lines a bit there. Why was he given the captain's armband? I don't know. I mean, I think Emery has tried to motivate Ozil and tried to include him. And when he went through that bad time in the summer, he was very clear to say that, this is his family, the Arsenal family. And he made that reference a few times. So it's why I said on the podcast today, it really feels like there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, because I don't believe any manager would deny himself the talent of Mesut Ozil, particularly when you don't have Danny Welbeck, when you don't have Henrik Mkhitaryan, when you don't have, I mean, he said after the West Ham game, it would have been nice to have another attacking option on the bench. But, you've got this guy. There he is. Bring him, even if he's not fully fit, even if, the knee injury that he's been out with for the last little while isn't quite recovered or isn't fully better, get him on the bench and you could get half an hour out of him if you really wanted to. So
do you believe there's a knee injury?
Maybe.
I mean, the frustrating thing is he is that player, like Andrew just said. If you give him 30 minutes, he can create brilliance in 30 minutes. At the end of that West Ham game, where I don't want to say we lack creativity, Mike, because we were still getting forward and we had shots on goal. And I'm not necessarily
didn't have a shot after the 68th minute.
Right.
So.
and not just necessarily the West Ham game. Like a lot of people say, we lack creativity, but we are getting shots in most matches. But we are lacking.
Then there's the
we're
Southampton
lacking,
game where he came on and
well, we're lacking
I mean
something. And you look at what Ozil should be, where what he owns and what he can own on the pitch, drives us forward, creates things when there aren't anything happening. You look at each top 4 team, they probably have 2 or 3 players that can do that. It seems like we've got a Wobie right now, who's that player who just wants to drive forward. And that's just what's frustrating about Ozil, is that he can't be that player. Why can't he fit into this system? Like, what truly is happening? If it's not the injury, what is going on?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I've theorized about it. I don't think that both sides or either side are being honest with what's happening with him. And it's just, I'm starting to get to the point where I don't care what the actual issue is. I'm sensitive towards if it's something with Mesut Ozil that is either psychological or autoimmune, or things that he just doesn't want to label as being the true issue. I'm also sensitive to the fact that it may just be a personality clash and Emery throwing his weight around, which, as you said, Andrew, isn't exactly what you would expect to see from somebody so new into the job. But I'm starting to not care. It's just, it's an untenable situation that, I mean, he's going to keep collecting £350,000 a week. People are going to keep focusing on that, and he's not playing for us. And it's, whether it's a rift in the dressing room that's forming as a result of that, whether it's just the fact that we don't have the attacking talent or the ability to sign new attacking talent, it has to end somewhere. And I don't see an end in sight for it.
Well, look, I think Emery has made his position pretty clear by what he's done and the way he hasn't picked Mesut Ozil and the things that he said about Ozil. And, you can read a lot into the fact that he hasn't been in the squad and that he's been used from the bench, or he hasn't been included. And there's been, more than one occasion this season when he hasn't been in the squad, despite the fact he has been fit. Right. So we can read a lot into that. And I think it's Emery sending the club a message. The only thing you'll ever get from the Mesut Ozil side of things is everything's A-OK, Team Ozil, brand Ozil, it's perfect, and that's, I get that. I understand that. And we shouldn't expect anything different than that. But somebody at this football club has got to make a decision about what's going on here, because Arsenal cannot carry a player earning that kind of money and just have him on the bench or not have him in the squad at all. So I think what I said on the pod this morning was that maybe Raul Sanyehi, who's the head of football, he's got to get on top of it one way or the other. And that might be to broker a little bit of a truce between Emery and Ozil, which will run till the end of the season.
Yeah.
Even then, you've got to worry about the motivation of the player, or the commitment of the player. If he's being sort of forced to, like when you're made shake hands with somebody you've just had a fight with. Remember when you're a kid, shake hands, and you're going, I don't want to fucking shake hands.
No eye contact.
Yeah, exactly. It's the worst thing. It doesn't change your resentment towards the other party. So I just feel like there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and you cannot look at this Arsenal team and say, if we had Mesut Ozil playing at the top of his game, we would be as bad as we are. We wouldn't. We'd be better. We'd be more creative. We'd be more fun to watch. We'd be more exciting. We'd be more dangerous to the opposition. I know that. You know that. Mike knows that. Unai Emery knows that. So what's going on? It can't be a case that Emery is just saying, I don't like this guy, so I'm not playing him. There's got to be more. And the leeway that he got under Arsene Wenger during his time at the club was, I won't say infamous, but everybody knew that he was the guy who was allowed to do what he wanted. And my gut feeling is that he has been told this season, you can't do what you want. You do what everybody else does, or you're treated the exact same way as everybody else. And I think that probably is the core of the issue.
And doesn't that lead you to, I mean, you're absolutely right that under Wenger, the players pretty much got to rule the asylum. Wenger wasn't known for having a strong hand. I mean, if you had a superstar of Mesut Ozil's status, he basically decided what he would do and when he would do, and he really got away with it. I like the fact that Emery's come in and basically said, whether you're Mesut Ozil or Hector Bellerin or Granit Xhaka or whoever, well, maybe not Granit Xhaka, he plays him every week. But, I mean, no matter who you are, your place is not safe. You have to act like you're on 20 grand a week. It doesn't matter what you're actually on. I like that. And to me, I just don't see a guy like Unai Emery coming in and making these kind of statements with Ozil unless there were something more going on that points towards Ozil as being the problem, rather than Emery not wanting to put the best field out on the best team out on the pitch.
Yeah,
and I have no proof of it, but the fact that there's these well-timed social media posts, it's starting to make me feel very gross when it comes to Mesut Ozil and what he's doing here.
Mike, Ozil's a brand, and
yeah, I hate that.
But it's part of it, and I'm not necessarily. I don't think I don't believe he posts everything that he puts on Instagram. I'm sure he has a team of people that do that for him. The problem with this, Mike, is as you mentioned before, there's this cloud of 350,000 pounds a week that overshadows this entire thing, because at City, when you look at their wage structure, they clearly have everyone on very close wages. I think their highest paid player is Kevin De Bruyne, who's at 350. You look at David Silva, even Aguero, they're at the 250 mark. So when you look at Ozil, it makes it even worse, because we're in a time right now where we keep hearing, hey, we don't have any money because of our wage bill. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but it seems the case. Then everyone looks at Ozil and says, well, let's point the blame on him. He was on 150, 200, maybe even 220. I don't think it's that big of a problem. But we need to clear this up, because clearly the club is in turmoil from that perspective, and what more can we do? We can just sit here and bitch and moan about it, but if he's not going to produce on the pitch, we got to ship him off. But who's going to pay him what he thinks his value is? That's the problem.
Well, and he doesn't have to leave if he doesn't get it.
No, and the frustrating thing about it, Mike, is there are glimpses of Mesut Ozil where you say he's worth $350 a week.
Oh, that pass against Huddersfield in the game that Andrew was mentioning.
Yeah,
when he was wearing the armband. I mean, that you see that, and you're like,
you want Kevin De Bruyne where he shows up in every match. Doesn't matter if it's Huddersfield or if it's United. He's there and does everything perfectly almost every match. I mean, when was the last time you can say him on 350 was a terrible player? It's very rare, and that's the frustration, is you're going to pay someone that much. You need to get it from them week in and week out. And every once in a while you go, yeah, he was poor. We say that way too often.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. Let's jump back into West Ham.
Yeah, well, I think even more so than Ozil, the thing that you want to blame here is the green kit. I mean, have we had one game that we've played? It's our third kit every year. There was this kit. I remember the year I went to Olympiacos. It was like that game was the only one that we won in that kit with the vertical 3 stripes down the bottom. Then there was the blue kit last year. I mean, I know how ridiculous this is, but when they put on that kit, do you think they just don't feel like they're playing for Arsenal and that translates onto the pitch? I mean, I'm kidding, but like, God damn it.
Do you think that Adidas is going to go back to the traditional red and white, blue and yellow, maybe a dark green in there every once in a while?
You know what they base their color schemes on, not what necessarily looks good on the pitch, but what sells as leisure wear.
That's why we keep seeing the hot pink. Every team has the hot pink.
And we all love the yellow and blue, and I love the traditional yellow and blue away kit. But your guy going off on holidays to Spain or whatever isn't going to wear the yellow and blue, whereas he'll wear the kind of the darker shirts and stuff. I hope they do. I mean, that really just doesn't look like an Arsenal kit to me. It's hard to identify them as an Arsenal team in that kit, isn't it? It just doesn't look like Arsenal. I know it's absolutely irrelevant to performances and everything else.
It should be, but in my mind, I'm still. As you'll see by the tone of this podcast and where we're going with it, I always have to blame something.
You know what? There was there's a podcast called Quickly Kevin. I don't know if you've heard this one. It's sort of a 90s football podcast. They had an interview with Gary Neville recently, and they were talking about that moment when Manchester United were playing away at Southampton, and Alex Ferguson made them change the kit at halftime because they were wearing a grey kit, and he felt that they couldn't spot each other well enough against the crowd. They ended up losing that game 6-3. It had very little to do with the kit, but they actually employed somebody to work at the club who ended up advising whoever was making their kits, whether it was Adidas or Umbro or Nike or whoever, about what are the best colors and the best color schemes in order to help players see each other better on the pitch from your peripheral vision. It's quite interesting. And they
more than nothing to do with it, but it doesn't, you know.
No, but it was quite interesting because she also had this idea that when you're out for a while as a player, it's not necessarily, you know, when a player comes back and his fitness is, or we say he was a bit rusty, those kind of things, his touch was a bit heavy or whatever. She reckoned it was all to do with your eyesight. It's to do with your peripheral vision and being tuned in. So you're aware of things hyper aware of things as a professional sports person. And that when you play a few games, you get used to all the movement and everything else again. It's not so much your physical fitness, even though that's probably a part of it. It may be bollocks, but I just thought it was quite interesting.
Well, maybe when the players look at the corner of their eye and they see the mint green, they're like, I'm not passing the ball to my pistachio ice cream. I mean, I don't want to
explain a lot of what happened at West Ham, in fairness. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I wake up and because the games are mostly in the morning here, and I see that they're wearing that kit, and I just that's it for me. It's over. We had pretty much one chance in the first half, and it was one that wasn't taken. Kolasinac, as much as you see him getting joy down the left side this season, most often his cutbacks that have led to goals and success this season have been from much further out on the wing. He finds himself in the 18, one-on-one with the goalie, and cuts it back. Andrew, does he have to take a shot there? I mean, if he takes a shot there, even if it's straight at Fabianski, is it just going through Fabianski?
With a left foot like his, yeah, it could easily have caused him problems. Watching it in real time, I thought, yeah, you should have a shot here. Should have a shot. It was there for him to have a shot. But when you look at the replay, his cutback actually was going straight to Lacazette. It was a brilliant piece of defending by Declan Rice, who ended up scoring the goal. So I can see why he pulled it back, because, you know, you're giving it to a top striker 10 yards from the goal. I would have liked to have seen him hit it. You know, he really does have a good left foot and he can really crack the ball. And from that position, I don't think anybody could have blamed him if he'd had a shot. There was also a chance for Lacazette, though. Remember, he burst through and Fabianski made a save. It wasn't necessarily the greatest shot he ever took. And there was also another one, Lacazette, where he took it down on his chest and tried to sort of lob it towards the top corner. Not really a full chance, maybe a half a chance, you would say. So there were some moments in that first half, but
yeah, I think actually Guendouzi Kenny G had an opportunity that went probably just a little bit wide. But yeah, I mean, my son and I were in New York. We were watching it from the hotel room. He slept in, missed the whole first half, and still saw more action than I did in that first half. And if not for the fact that West Ham cannot shoot, cannot hit I mean, other than Declan Rice one time, they missed a bunch of open opportunities. We couldn't create. Nasri's a cunt. I mean, these are the things that you just take out of that first half.
To be fair to Nasri, though, Mike, for not playing for so long, he looked decent.
I mean,
just that terrible, but he looked decent. And
is that a reflection on us?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we can even make Nasri look decent. Speaking of which, the second half starts. You can't make a better assist than Xhaka did to Nasri. I mean, you just had the ball right down to that guy, and of course you're going to make him look good.
It must have been a misplaced header. It just must have hit his head. There's no reason for him to have done that, especially when he's got a player out wide that he could lay it off to, who could clear. It's got to just be deflection or just misplaced, because you can't see a player of that caliber doing that.
Yeah, but you can see Xhaka doing it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I think he was trying to head it to Kolasinac. I think that's where he saw Kolasinac and thought, I'll head it to him. I don't know why.
I think he was trying to head it to Nasri. I think he forgot that Nasri doesn't play for Arsenal anymore.
Well, he never played with Nasri, so he would never have been on that trip. It's just a brain fart. absolute brain fart, which he has too often, unfortunately.
Is
just
he another?
Just don't let him anywhere near our defensive third.
No, never. I mean, credit to Declan Rice. I mean, it's a beautiful goal, but when it's laid on a plate for you, you're gonna just smash that home, you know. But hey, Mike, if Leno was a better keeper, he would have saved it.
Yeah, that's what everyone's saying in your neck of the woods.
Bad. So we are now without a win in 5 league games away from the Emirates, and we are truly playing catch up now for that Champions League spot. And I'm nervous because we've got Chelsea and City on the horizon, and if anything goes the way that it could against Liverpool, I mean, we're going to lose that goal difference to United pretty quickly.
I mean, if that's what we're clinging on to at this point, you know, we have to swallow our medicine. I mean, we're sick. I mean, there's a problem with the team. We knew that last spring. We should be aware of that continuously now. We've known we're sick. The whole undefeated thing was a spoonful of sugar, but I mean, we're out of fucking sugar. It's over. As far as the, you know, optimism that I had that, you know, geez, third is possible. We could even finish second. I mean, we got really excited with that, with the spirit and this is different. Last year we wouldn't have gotten these points type of thing. But this is the reality. We were a 6th place team last season, and we're probably a 6th place team this season until things either get sorted out or we have to go back and restart again, a la the Brendan Rodgers situation. But
so, Mike, I don't want to put Andrew on the spot, but I just went back through my emails and I've been receiving his I've been on his mailing list from at least February 3rd, 2010. So I'm going to ask him, how does this get fixed?
The easy questions. Thanks.
Yeah.
How does it get fixed?
And like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, just from like are we judging him too quickly with 6 months in? Do we need to give him 2 or 3 transfer windows? Just things like what do we do?
Well, you got to give them a new manager time. You've got to back the new manager in the transfer market, which is why I feel very sorry for him in January when everyone can see we need some investment in the team and he's being told you can only have loan players. That's not how you fix problems. Those are Band-Aids, sticking plasters for things which need plaster of Paris or surgery, you know. There might be some logic to that in the sense that we want to keep our powder dry until the summer when we want to buy the players that we really want and we don't want to go out and buy any more stopgap players. I get it completely. But that requires perhaps patience. Well, of course, patience, but maybe it also requires some communication from the football club to the fans about what their plans are. Because I think people could rest a bit easier if we could see that there was a strategy going on. At the moment, it's hard not to be deeply cynical that in the first window that Stan Kroenke owns the club 100%, there's no money. No money. You know, as I said, there may be reasons for it, but if you've got some fear about Kroenke and the way that he's running Arsenal, it plays into that very much. So if there was some communication via the media, via the official website about what's going on and why, and I don't mean they have to like lay out their grand master plan and say, we're going to do this, 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 and this is when we're going to do it, but something to offer us a bit of insight into the way that the club is being run. We're not spending in January because we think the January window is bad and we can't get the players we really want until the summer. People will be frustrated, but they would understand. Right?
Yeah, and pointing out the commercial deal. I mean, you know, everyone's trying to read between the lines with these blogs that are being written, and you know, I've spent far too much time in the last few days reading blogs about STCC, and
I don't think there's anything to do. I don't think our lack of spending in January has anything to do with FFP or short-term cost controls or anything like it. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think it's a decision that the club have made based on what they want to do in the summer, and that's fine. You know, we can all understand that. But I think what we also have to do is really be decisive with situations like the Mesut Ozil situation. What can we get for £350,000 a week? You know, for the whatever 2.5 years that he's got left on his contract, £40 million. What can we get?
Seven Lucas Torreiras is the answer.
Exactly. What can we get for £40 million? You could get 2 reasonable players. You could get
Leroy Sané and Gabriel Jesus, who are both under 100,000 a week.
You know, these are the players that we can target. These are the players that we're going to have to target. We're not going to be able to buy 40, 50 million pound players. I don't think we're going to do that, but we can buy and identify young talent at 10, 15, 20 million pounds.
Well, that's what Sven Mislintat was hired to do.
This is what we're going to have to do. This is how we fix it. We balance the wage budget. We get value for the wages that we're spending, which we're not getting from Mesut Ozil. I don't think he's alone either. I think Henrik Mkhitaryan is another player who's disappointing and not worth the money that we're paying him. So I'd advocate trying to move him on and bring in young talent, try and grow this young talent. And if we have to sell some of our favorite players along the way, like in 3 years' time, if we have to sell Lucas Torreira for 70, 80 million pounds because he's become a really, really great midfielder, it's annoying, but so be it. We got to do it, and we reinvest that money back into the team. And we've got to get into that kind of a cycle of operation, not the ad hoc kind of reactive deadline day bullshit signings that we made. When you look at the likes of Mustafi, when you look at the likes of Lucas Perez, those kind of players who are just really not worth anywhere near the money that we paid for them, who become very difficult to move, therefore. So what we have to hope is that these people have a proper plan and a proper strategy in terms of building the club and making it more competitive.
And I tend to think that exists. I look at the revamped back, the backroom staff, the pushing out of Arsene Wenger, the fact that we're still dealing with things like the Aaron Ramsey contract situation, which we talk about every single week. I feel like there's a bit of a jumping forward on the reactionary side from Arsenal Twitter, from Arsenal supporters, from the media, as to how quickly the situation can be resolved. And I do think, STCC may play a little bit of a role in that. I've been kind of hawkish on the fact that, as it relates to spend some money, Kroenke, compared to the reality of what owners' money is actually spent on, which I want to touch on a little bit. But I feel like this summer, and it's always, the optimists' way of saying, well, this summer, the next opportunity is when it's going to change. But this summer is when revenue deals start kicking in on the commercial side, when contracts that, whether we should be losing them on freeze or not, that's a separate debate. When wages start to fall off the bill, when the manager has a better opportunity to clear out some players like possibly a Carl Jenkinson, a Mustafi, a Petr Cech even, who are killing the wage bill right now relative to the amount of minutes we're getting from them. And so, I mean, I'll be damn pissed if September 1st rolls around, or even August 15th rolls around this year, and our team doesn't look substantially different than it does right now. But I'm not really holding that same guideline for January 31st.
No. Too much change right now, Mike, can also be detrimental. Like we're in a hole, but you remove 4 or 5 players and you bring 4 or 5 players in. There's language gaps. There's system they have to figure out. I mean, at this point, we're fighting with what we've got, and I can't see doing a big shift in players is going to help us leapfrog into 3rd place. I just don't see it happening. And Andrew had pointed out in his most recent mailing list article, like, if you look at our defenders, and I asked you this a couple weeks ago, Mike, why haven't our defenders gotten better? It's not for a lack of coaching. Only Bellerin and Holding seem to have improved. Like a player of Mustafi's quality should have gotten better in this 6 months.
You can argue that Mustafi has not been as bad.
But has he though?
I don't know. I mean, I'm too busy watching him.
Statistically, he looks good on paper, but Has he gotten better?
Is that paper lying down on his back on the pitch?
We all have eyes. We all have eyes, don't
You
we?
know?
We can all see.
Yeah. I think that when you look at this entire squad, the players who are getting better are those young players who we've always seen greatness. I still say Iwobi's not ready yet for us to lift onto the caliber of Liverpool, City, Tottenham, and Chelsea, but he's improved. Bellerin has improved. Socrates is a weird one because we know of him at Dortmund. The English game is different, but these players should be getting better. And for me, the track record of Unai Emery and his team has been one of success. So we got to give him longer than 6 months. But these players should have improved in that 6 months more than they have. And I think it's down to the player now. And maybe that's taken him this assessment period to say, Mustafi's not good enough. He isn't getting better. I'm using him as an example, you know. But it's just a weird one, Mike, because we've got to give him time, but these players in part should be getting better. They should be improving, and I'm not seeing it. I'm really not.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that considering where we are.
But granted, if you were to, like, I know Danny from Burkamp Wonderland, I love this tweet. Name his starting 11, his best starting 11. How often has he got to play with that starting 11? How healthy has that starting 11 been, where each week they're able to be in training and really sit down and learn the system and play together? It's not very often, but you can't always blame it on injuries. You got to morph, because every team gets those.
But we don't know what his best 11 is, and we also don't really know what his formation is. And it's, you know, it's the chopping and changing of formation between a back three and a back four. This sort of move away from the very deliberate philosophy that he seemed to start the season with. If you remember the way we played against Manchester City, where we took to the field in the first game of the season and we played it out from the back against the best team in the Premier League at that point, one of the best teams in Europe. And it was Emery saying, this is the way I want to play. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to experience some teething problems along the way. Some of these players are going to prove themselves not good enough to play the kind of football I want to play, but this is how we're going to do it. And I think we all bought into that in a way, right? We all said, okay, that's cool. He's going to find out about these players over the course of the season, and some will fall by the wayside. Some will improve and get better, and others will just come in and do the job that they're supposed to do. But it's not like that anymore.
And I wonder, and just genuine question, is it because he's now realized these players aren't good enough to play that way?
Maybe.
I mean,
maybe.
Could that be part of it?
It could be, but I'm also curious as to what it is that he wants them to do that these players are unable to do, if you know what I mean. It's not like he's asking them to be something that they're really not. All he's asking them to do is run and pass the football and get into the right positions. And that's
you would think at this level that'd be easy for them because they are world-class players.
Well, maybe not easy, but like not fucking impossible.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems it is for a few of them, you know, and maybe that's informing his decision to change formation and to try and, I think, be a bit more conservative. And I'm not sure it suits the players that we've got to be conservative. If you've got a load of bad defenders, maybe, just maybe, you should accept that and not add more bad defenders to the mix. Instead, add attacking players where you're a bit stronger, which sounds a bit like, let's just attack and not worry about our defense. But if you're continually focused on where you are weak and you're not seeing any improvement, what's your other option? Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you have, Mike? And you know, for me, it's kind of, I think this season's a write-off. I think we just need to finish as best we can, whether that's Europa, hopefully it's Champions League, but it's just, you know, one thing we really wanted from Unai was that tactically we would have someone who just didn't go into every game with the same plan, the same formation like we saw under Arsene. There was never really a plan B. And right now we're seeing plan B, C, D like almost every other week. And I think that's what Andrew had said. Like there's nothing cemented right now. And every once in a while, if you see him go from a 3 to a 4 in the back and then you see the game play out, you understand why. There's just no rhyme or reason right now.
It's bizarre because, I mean, I was so in favor of this change to adjusting on the fly, to showing different looks so that the opposition never really knew what to expect. The opposite of the Wenger approach to playing opponents. And, and for a while, I felt good in that feeling that, that was a positive change, and why were we never doing that? And now you're hearing it completely tip over to the other side of the scale, which is that he's almost, Claudio Ranieri with the tinkering.
How crazy is it, though, that there's some of our fan base who are already calling for him to get sacked?
I think it's absurd.
So bizarre.
I think it's absurd.
They must be clickbate fans. They have to be, right?
Well, as long as they click on us, then that's fine. But let's move into something completely non-productive, which I call the blame game. And we have a question in the chat from aforementioned Danny, who's excited that he's finally achieved his career goals by being mentioned by you on the podcast. Is the clusterfuck at Arsenal the moment making Wenger look like he was the one holding it together? And let me tie that in with a poll that we ran on Twitter over the past 24 hours, which operates on the premise that we understand we're kind of in a shitty situation right now, and that, because we're all dysfunctional, ingrate Arsenal supporters, we have to pick somebody to blame for it. I put 3 people up there. I've been told that the wrong people were up there, but sorry. Stan Kroenke, and we see a note behind you, Andrew, so I have a feeling I know where this is going to go. But
note, I don't know what you're talking about.
Stan Kroenke, Arsene Wenger, and Ivan Gazidis, and I almost added Dick Law to that. Decided not to. Almost added Vic Akers, but this is supposed to be serious. So I was rather surprised. Kroenke ran away with the blame. That didn't surprise me that much, with 59%. Gazidis 23%. Wenger 18%. It's not because I'm American. I really don't think so, but it's been sticking in my craw a little bit about how much blame Stan Kroenke is getting for this situation. I mean, aside from the buck stops here and him being the person who's supposed to oversee everything else, to me, he's not an Arsenal fan. He never is, never was, never will be. This is one of his portfolio of investments, and that's it. And if you hate him for that, fine. But Andrew, what do you make of this whole, everyone else throws money into the club and you don't, and blaming that for our lack of success on the pitch and the player personnel decisions? Because that's where I think there's a disconnect.
Okay, look, I think Kroenke has always been who he is, a hands-off owner who puts people in place to run the club. And I think over the last number of years, I know people will say we never spend money, et cetera, et cetera. We do, and we have. We've just spent it badly. And I think Ivan Gazidis and Arsene Wenger have to take the lion's share of the blame in that regard. If they've got sign-off on football decisions and transfer decisions within the confines of what Kroenke tells them to operate in, then if they've made those decisions, then they're the ones to blame for it. The £350,000 a week to Ozil is a ridiculous wage. Even if at the time I was very happy that he'd signed. Big transfer fees on players. Yeah, exactly. 35 million on Mustafi, 35 million on Xhaka, 20 million more or less on Lucas Perez. Big wages, the deals that we did last January, you cannot convince me that swapping 30-goal a season Alexis Sanchez for 4-goal or 5-goal a season Henrik Mkhitaryan was a good move, particularly when you're paying the guy who's coming in and scoring 10% or 20% of the goals that Alexis scored is coming in and earning nearly twice as much as what Alexis was earning. I mean, it's absurd. It's terrible. It's terrible business. So the way that we've spent our money has been bad. And I think we're going to feel the pinch on those decisions for a while yet, because it becomes very difficult to move Mkhitaryan on. It becomes very difficult to move Mesut Ozil on if that's what you want to do. My issue with Kroenke isn't so much that I want him to swoop in like a white knight with his mustache flowing in the wind and saying, here's 200 million pounds, go buy some players, you guys. Just go buy. It's not that. It's the fact that they tell us that they want Arsenal to compete for the biggest trophies in football, for the Premier League, for the Champions League, across the women's game, at youth level. They want this to be one of the biggest and best clubs in Europe. And that is, in this day and age, completely at odds with a model in which the owner does not contribute to investment in the team. Like it or not, that is the reality. And we can talk all day about how smart we might be and how we can improve and how we can bring in new commercial deals and how we can sell better and how we can buy better. And I hope we do all those things because we need to. But you can't tell people you want to win the Premier League and want to win the Champions League and then sit 4,000 miles away, or however far it is, between London and LA, and people watch as you're pumping money into your LA Rams, and maybe that's your passion project and all that kind of stuff, and not expect them to be a little bit unhappy. You can't, like, it's like me sitting here telling you, I want to, I don't know what it's like. It's just like me telling you a straight out lie is what it is. That's what it feels like to me.
Here's my question, though, and this comes from a lot of the stuff that I've read in the last couple of weeks, and I may be either misunderstanding it, incredibly naive, which that's spoiler. I think that's probably it, or I'm just not getting it, because my understanding of owner investment in your club is as it relates to covering debts that you have in order to prevent the clubs from falling afoul of the loss control. There are rules, and again, rules that are supposed to keep clubs from having expenses that exceed, I think, 105 million pounds over 3 seasons from what they're bringing in naturally from their own revenues. I am aware that some clubs, Man City specifically, have commercial deals like the Etihad that are funded by the owner's company and therefore are probably artificially inflated, but not to the point where they're getting in trouble with the Premier League over it. Manchester United is just simply ridiculously global brand that they are, and brings in revenue from those. But I mean, if Kroenke were to just say $200 million of my own money is going into the club, I don't know that he can even do that.
I don't know how it would work either, but
he can't just say here's 200,000 pounds or 200 million pounds for player transfers and wages.
But Mike, but he has, though, because our net spend is only behind United and City. So I agree with Andy that the money has been spent poorly, but he has pumped money into the club.
No,
he's only pumped money from profits that the club has made. He hasn't taken any of his own.
Exactly, but if you look at the way that like the model that Ivan Gazidis and Arsene wanted to spend was the money made by the club is what was put back into the club.
Correct.
And so
it's the club's money. It's not Kroenke's money.
And so they created that. I think they created that before Stan came in. And why not, as an owner, buy into that where you say to the owner, "Hey, you're going to make a lot of money without having to ever invest." I get that. The money has been spent poorly. So where I blame Stan and his team is allowing the management of the club to be run so poorly for so long. But what I mean by that is he sent Josh over to look at the way the club was run. And within 6 to 7 months, a lot of people got fired, right? Coincidence or not that Arsene stepped down around that time, I don't know. But I blame him. Yeah. I blame Stan and his team for not being aware of the football market. As Andrew said, his passion project is in Colorado and in LA. That's where his passion lies. He needs someone who can manage the market. And I mean, Gnabry leaving for so cheap, Szczesny for leaving so cheap, the whole Sanchez situation. If they understood the market, they would not be allowing these players to go for what they did.
Ramsey and Welbeck leaving
exactly.
for free. Yeah.
So then we see that money that is lost that would have been put back into the club. And it sustains that model that has been created for him. And a lot of the argument is, well, why do we leave Highbury for this? That's Stan's fault. Stan wasn't there when we left Highbury. He came in after that.
Could you imagine if we hadn't left Highbury, where we'd be right now?
Right. But so to your point that you earlier said, like, for me, Kroenke has not necessarily given the money to the club, and I misspoke there, but he's given the freedom for people to manage that money, and it was managed very poorly. So he needs to bring in someone to someone to manage that understands the market. I know better than most, because I live in Colorado where all of his sports teams are. The best thing for Arsenal is to have Josh Kroenke run this club, because he understands the way the sport world works. We've seen a revitalization in the Denver Nuggets, in the Colorado Avalanche. So he is looking at this from a business perspective, but he's looking at it more from a sports fan perspective. And I think that he's the best option for us. And we joke about it, but why not have Walmart on the sleeve of our shirts, on our training ground, on our training tops?
I'll tell you why.
The Man City model of just pumping money into the club through sponsorship, because that's the only way we can compete with the likes of the PSGs and the rest of the world.
You're on to something now, which is, can we increase, because again, I do put stock in the fact that there are financial restrictions in place. I don't believe it's completely bogus. I know that there are workarounds. What Man City is doing, and the reason that they are able to pay the wages that they are and sign the players that they are, is because their stadium or their shirt naming right deal is for $80 million a year. Our brand new one is about to be for $50 million a year, and that's a major upgrade.
We don't have a new shirt sponsor. I mean, a new shirt manufacturer, kit manufacturer.
Well, no, the renewal of the upgrade in the cost of the Emirates sponsoring the shirt, not a new one, but but
that was a few years ago, wasn't it? So I don't think it comes anywhere near.
I think the stadium naming rights are until 2028. I believe in 2019 in the summer, the shirt naming rights and the shirt manufacturer rights both upgrade. And my point though is, Walmart can't do that because they're a public company. They're traded. They're beholden to their stockholders, even though it's largely owned by Kroenke's wife and their family. They can't just go and spend way over the odds and fake fund.
Is Chevrolet a public company?
Yes, but they perceive the value in Manchester United's brand as being sharply higher than
anybody. You got fucking fired. The guy who did that deal got fired.
But therein lies the problem, Mike. Is if you are, if you look at okay, Walmart doesn't really exist in the world where Arsenal live. I get that, but look at the brand that Arsenal has in the U.S. And it just doesn't. There are obviously loopholes to the financial fair play. There's obviously go-arounds, and I don't want to be the club that does that. But to compete in the world of football today, you have to have some acknowledgement that that's happening, and we need to manage this better.
Yeah, but you can't just sneak money from Stan Kroenke's wallet.
No, I understand
into the transfer and wage budgets, and just not have it called something else, which I guess is what is the challenge.
Maybe I'm way off point here, but who in the hell thought Visit Rwanda would be a great sponsor for our shirt? I mean, there had to have been other companies that.
Andrew, have you been to Rwanda yet? As a result,
I haven't. I assume it was Ivan Gazidis, and I assume it was also Vinay Venkatesham, who's our new managing director, who was the chief commercial guy. So he would have been the guy who did all those deals. He's the guy you see when we do a deal with a washing machine company and all that. He talks about what a great association it is. We
have an official cryptocurrency now.
But there must have been other companies knocking on the door to say, we'll give you more money.
No, I would say that's probably the one that gave us the most money.
You think so?
And that's why we went with it. Yeah.
I don't know that there are deals out there that haven't been made. I maybe in the past, but I actually think that's the one area that's improving, that gives us more financial flexibility. And this is the last time I'm going to say it, because I don't want to keep belaboring it. the vast majority of casual and by casual, I don't mean in your intensity for your fanship. I mean, as far as how much research you do or financial inspection of annual reports you do, the vast number of people look at Man City and they say, well, their owner invested in the club. Well, he did because he racked up billions and billions of dollars of debt in the early years of his campaign of owning the club. Now the club is making enough revenues out of it to sustain it.
Yeah.
Chelsea is the exclusion in the sense that their funding they operate at such a loss because of their stadium.
But that's
because
slowing
of their,
down now, Mike. You see that.
But there's over $1 billion in loans that Chelsea owns to Roman Abramovich right now.
Is he ever going to call those loans in?
Well, imagine he gets tired of this, or England get tired of having a Russian.
Well, they've already kicked him out. He's got to live in Israel now. They didn't renew his citizenship. He's still buying players for the club, and I'm not necessarily saying that is the way that we should go. That all of a sudden we should become the plaything of a rich man. I'm just from the point of view of stepping back and looking at a football club and looking at the way it's being run and the people who own the football club, the stated ambitions they have for that football club are almost impossible to achieve using the model that we currently use.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
In the competitive environment that we're in.
In the competitive environment, and maybe in 4 years or 5 years, we could build ourselves to the point where, okay, we've got a really competitive team and we can sell players as well as Liverpool sell players, and we can buy players who make a real difference to our team. But are people ready for that commitment? And do we have the people who can make that happen? Do we have the smart people running the club who can change our fortunes the way that Liverpool's fortunes were changed? Because let's not forget, Liverpool were kind of where we are now for a good few years. Not in Europe or a Europa League club. Yep. And now they're top of the table and they're gunning for the title. So things can change. And for the most part, I think they've done it in a similar sort of way that we have. I'm not sure, you guys would probably know better than I would, but the Fenway Sports Group, have they funded transfers at Liverpool? Or have they invested in things at Liverpool that have given them a competitive edge, whether it's players or wages or facilities or those kind of things, right? There's an absolute disconnection between what KSE and Kroenke say they want and the way they operate. And I just find those things hard to marry. And I find them frustrating. That's fair enough.
That's where I and I hate to say this, Mike and Andrew, but I want to give KSE a tad bit of respect for the removal and the stepping down of Arsene and Ivan gone. We have pretty much a new regime running this club. As Andrew had pointed out earlier, there's a lot of stuff we have to fix, and it's not going to happen overnight. So what we need to do now is give them time to allow this new regime to come in and run this club. And as I said before, my anger with them is allowing Arsene and Ivan to run it so poorly for so long, to buy low and keep these players on high wage. That's all something of the past that needs to get fixed by Unai and his team, and we're going to allow them to do that. In the meantime, the model needs to change, because what was happening before is not sustainable. We can't just keep, we have to have Kroenke invest. Now, maybe that happens in the summer, but we also know that there's $3 billion coming out of his pocket in LA right now. So maybe he can't spend the money. But as Andrew said, why not have the club come out and write a statement to that, just to say, here's the plan, here's the model.
What did he spend $1.6 billion in LA on?
The stadium.
Okay. That's a real estate deal. That is not a Rams competitiveness deal.
I get that, but when you buy a stadium, when you buy a house in the United States, what is the one thing they tell you when you're going through the lease agreement, the proposal, everything else? What do they tell you not to do? Spend money. Everything gets frozen until certain shit gets done. That stadium was supposed to open this summer. It's been delayed because he's buying everything from China and they're shipping it over part by part. So the problem is he doesn't have.
Can we send Mesut Ozil there and part exchange that?
If his money is truly frozen in that stadium, maybe that's why he can't pump money into Arsenal. He's basically using Arsenal as an equity piece to build this stadium.
That's a fear people have, yeah.
You can't pump money into a club that doesn't have debt.
But here's the thing, Mike. Look at what Jerry Jones did and I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. Look what Jerry Jones did with that stadium down in Dallas. All of a sudden, the Dallas Cowboys went from having a $1 billion evaluation to a $6 billion evaluation because he uses that stadium to sell out not only football games, stadium, or concerts, boxing.
No question, that has zero impact on the performance of the team.
But Mike, what I'm saying is that money, hopefully, once he starts seeing it recouped, he allows himself to say to the ownership or the rest of the Arsenal board, we have liquid cash now. Here's $100 million to go buy that player. We don't have to follow this model of only spending what we make. So that's why I'm saying, like, if there is this delay, it's because of the stadium. You know what I mean? And so it's all hindsight, but maybe in 2 years from now, we have that ability to say we're not cash strapped. Who knows?
Well, I don't think we are cash strapped right now. I think we're building a mountain of cash right now. It's just that we're strapped by the wage bill that we have and the decisions that we've made.
We could have gotten Virgil van Dijk for Mustafi. At the time that transfer went through, I don't think they would have wanted 70 million for him. I really don't.
We had the biggest cash reserves in the world 3 or 4 years ago. We were sitting on the biggest cash reserves in football at a time when that money would have bought some incredible players for this football club. And all of a sudden, you get to a point where the transfer market explodes and £35 million, rather than getting you a really, really top-class player, because remember, we got Alexis for £32 million. We got Mesut Ozil for £42 million from the biggest club in the world. All of a sudden, you're spending £35 million on Mustafi.
I mean,
so that's how bad the transfer market went. And our inaction, our unwillingness to spend, whether it was the club's prudence or Wenger's prudence or Gazidis or Kroenke, whatever it was, is the biggest mistake we've made in the last few years, is not to invest the money we had in the team when that money would have gone so far. And all of a sudden, the cash that we had was worth less and less and less. And became, not that the cash itself became less valuable, but what you could do with it was seriously restricted.
Well, player inflation took care of that.
Yeah.
I just wonder, we gambled on players and it didn't work. We unfortunately also gambled on their wages.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think mistakes have been made, which is why, and we're going to get close to wrapping up here, which is why in that poll, I think I'm surprised to see so much blaming Kroenke, other than for his oversight. I think the wage deals, I've never been so upset as I am right now at Arsene Wenger, and I wasn't that upset with him the last few years until I saw how this has all turned out. We are going to say goodbye to Andrew right now. We got a little in depth with that conversation. So Andy and I are going to stay on and do some listener questions. Andrew, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Hope it's not 2 years before we have you back again. But
sure.
Appreciate you taking time out of your Monday for us. And
that was great. No, thanks a lot, guys, and good luck with the show in your new format.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Bye.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Mikey, let's get into these questions.
As soon as I figure out how to...
You still with me here, guy?
Yeah, we're here. All right, so as we watch our chat room dwindle down now that Andrew's gone, if you'd like to stay around, please do. We're going to spend a few extra minutes on some listener questions. Just one quick recap. We need to have a show. What I'd like to try to do in the next couple of weeks is get on Nate Smith, who wrote that article for You Are My Arsenal. Talks a lot about what we've been talking about with Stan Kroenke. We have a mutual friend who knows Nate, so I'm hoping that we can get him on soon. Because I don't mean to be stubborn, I don't mean to be naive, but this whole thing about putting money into the club for transfers, I just think that's I just think it's a complete misconception. So enough of that for today. User questions. You've got the list in front of you, Andy, as well?
We got one from Tokyo Gooner. He says, hi. Hello.
Hi.
Can you tell me if Kroenke...
That's his whole user question.
Can you tell me if Kroenke's put money into the Rams, the Nuggets, and other teams he owns? It's a good question, but the system in the U.S. is set up a little differently, and Mike can probably speak better to this, but you have salary cap, you have other variables that kind of play into how the NFL, the NBA, the NHL is set up. So player contracts are really based around the top players in the league. So, for example, his Colorado Avalanche have a player right now, Mikko Rantanen, who's probably the best player in the NHL. At current time, both statistically and on the ice. He's out of contract this summer. And it's not, hey, how much is he worth? It's how much is he worth compared to other players in the league. And so essentially, he will make the money comparative to 5 or 6 other players around his structure and how well he's playing. And so it's just set up a lot differently. And you have to abide by that or you get penalized and fined. And it's almost impossible to not do that. So, yeah, he puts money into...
There's also luxury tax situations where
exactly.
Even if you use the rules that you're allowed to use to exceed the salary cap with regards to... Because there are rules put in place to allow you to re-sign your own players and exceed the salary cap. And you can do that, but you almost pay a 100% tax when you exceed a certain level. And almost nobody wants to do that.
So most owners in the U.S. invest in their players elsewhere. Nice locker rooms, great facilities, great locations for them to play in. And so that, I think, really takes...
Escort services.
Yeah. And so it's a little bit... It's measured very differently. And so it's really hard to make that comparison to the Premier League or any other league around the world.
Which, again, goes into my whole thing of, no matter how much you spend on the club and the stadium and all that, your team is going to perform based on the way it's managed by your management, not by the amount of money that's put into it. That's why small market teams in salary cap sports, I'm not including baseball, although it's happened, that's why they win championships all the time, because it's a socialist kind of economics. And to a certain extent, Premier League is starting to become that with the wages, the self-sustainability, but yeah, I mean, he spends a lot of money on them, but it isn't just to make them more competitive. Question: I'm going to combine 2 questions from Ryan Cost and Dro the Gooner, who I've seen in the chat today. I don't see any other top European club coming in for Mesut. If you were in charge, would you bite the bullet and cancel his contract, or let him go on a free and continue, as opposed to continue to hold our wage bill hostage? Andy, I don't know if you can't just cancel his contract. I mean, maybe you can buy it out by giving him a large amount of the money just to go away, but can you even cancel a contract?
I think you can release players for free, but you still
essentially canceling the contract.
You still have to pay them out to a certain portion of their contract or wage. So it doesn't ever suit us, the best option for this, Mike, is if he truly doesn't fit into the system, if he's truly butting heads with Unai Emery. Let's say Galatasaray come in and they offer him $150 a week, and we say, well, we'll pay another $100,000 for his wage, so we cover part of the wage bill for him to leave. That only frees up $250 for us, and then it gets him away from the team. So
yeah, I mean
that's the only viable scenario.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about, and I ran a poll a couple of weeks ago, how much do you think we would get for Ozil if we sold him? And some people were saying 30, 40, 50 million. No way, because the team would have to pay their wages. We will have to take a huge hit to get rid of him. But at this point, goes back to our conversation before, at what point does the fresh start and the clean slate have value compared to continuing to deal with this nightmare for possibly the next 3 seasons? Mm-hmm. Because if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he can pull a Carl Jenkinson times 10 and say, my wage is guaranteed. Play me or don't play me, I'm still making the wage, and I'm going to wage my own public relations battle on Twitter and Instagram.
He could also turn around and become injury-free, play for us every match, and dole out some assists and goals in this new system. So there's also the opposite, Mike. Patricio, whose Twitter handle is Cockroach34, would we realistically tell Ozil that he needs to accept a lower wage and move to another club in January, or face not playing the remainder of the season, his contract while Emery is still at the club? Kind of falls into what we were just talking about, right?
Well, right, but let me tweak it a little bit. If Emery said straight out to him, we want you to go, and we're not going to play you anymore, what do you think Ozil and his team's reaction to that will be? Or is that what's happening right now?
For a player of Ozil's caliber, and when we talk about him being an icon and a brand, if that's really the conversation that's happened, Mike, he's doing everything correct. He's putting the right messages on Instagram. He's showing other teams, I'm not a cancer. I'm in a shitty situation, and I'm being positive about it. And maybe that is part of this. Maybe he is maybe him and Unai did sit down and say, hey, I'm never going to fit into this system, so I'll be professional. Let's get me moved in the summer. But
yeah, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just saying if Emery if that happened, and he said, I don't trust you. If that's true that he doesn't trust you, he said, I don't trust you. I can only really feel comfortable selecting you once out of every 5 games, and that just isn't cutting it for me. Find another club and move on. Do you think Ozil says, I don't need to find another club. Fine, don't play me. Or does his professional pride get in the way and say, I need to go someplace and spend the last 5 years of my career, being in the public eye playing football because of his brand? Like Mike Hernandez says in the chat, yeah. I mean, sitting out and pulling a Carl Jenkinson would hurt his brand.
He's a different type of player, because you had mentioned earlier that Petr Cech was on a large contract. I see Petr Cech as the type of player towards the end of his career who would turn around and say to Unai Emery, hey, I'll take a pay cut to stay in London, to play for Arsenal, to be a backup, because I love being in this city, my family are here, blah, blah, blah. So he's the type of player. I don't see that with Mesut Ozil. He's still got a lot of career left. And so
the only reason Czech would do that would be if it helped us make the team better, because again, contractually,
what does he got to lose? He's in the end of his career. He gets to be a backup.
He's done at the end of this year unless he signs a new contract with a lower wage. I'm talking about somebody who signed for 3 seasons.
No, exactly.
Yeah, and Czech's on $100,000 a week right now. That can't continue.
How much is I wonder how much Ospina's on.
Ospina is on, I think, 45, which we're not paying, but it still counts towards all the wage things. I got the whole thing in front of me. Mkhitaryan's supposedly on 180. Kolasinac is on 119.5. Now, I love Kolasinac, and he was obviously free, but no, we couldn't have gotten him by promising him less than 120,000.
Yeah, but Mike, we didn't pay a transfer fee.
I know, but
the money goes back into. They look at how much his transfer fee would have cost, and they probably give him a percentage of that for signing, and that's probably why we signed him, was because we offered him more wage than a lot of other places. Because let's not forget, he was the Bundesliga left back of the season, and so you need to pay over the odds a little bit. I love this question from Nikki Wilson. How long should a club like Arsenal wait for players to fulfill their potential? Iwobi is 22 and has been in the first team for 3 years. Has he improved at all? And look at what Henry was doing at his age in 2002. And, it's a really good question. I think that a club like Arsenal should wait for players to fulfill their potential if the potential is there. And you look at like Cesc Fabregas, who clearly at a very young age was a very good player. You look at, on the other note, like a Jack Wilshere, where players like Thierry Henry and Bergkamp were on record saying, we would love to run over to see the youth train, because there was this kid named Jack Wilshere who was just absolutely annihilating everyone. We waited too long for him to sprout. And I don't think that Unai would have waited this long. So I think a good 3 to 5 years to fulfill potential. That being said, Mike, how is Iwobi going to, like, let's say Reece Nelson comes back to this club, how is he going to stay in the ranks if Reece Nelson, there's no way Iwobi.
Survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
Let's find out.
Absolutely. So I would say 3 to 5 years, and if that 2 to 3 year mark in training, you see that they're a great player, but they're just not getting the playing time, send them out on loan. You know?
I mean, as we've seen with Jack Wilshere and others, I mean,
we waited too long.
Yeah, but I mean, there isn't this thing where you can't send somebody out on loan, and you know, it was said in a podcast I was listening to recently. It may even have been Andrew's. You know, what we're not doing is taking these young. I mean, other than I guess maybe with Reese Nelson, we're not taking these guys and sending them out on loans to where if they have a very successful loan spree, we've created a market for them. I think Eddie Nketiah would be a great, candidate for that. Because certainly, you know, he seems to be kind of struggling in his very, very limited time here. We need to be doing that more, and that's part of the whole financial thing where we're selling people for nothing, we're losing people for nothing, and we're overpaying to bring people in. From Gooner82, if we fail to reach top 4, is it fair to blame Unai for not using his own money to buy some players? This is basically where we're headed at this point with Arsenal Twitter. I know that was tongue in cheek. Appreciate the question, but yeah, I think he needs to dip into his wallet and do that. So,
right. So the last question, and we've covered this a little bit, but it's a good question, and I'm going to give the answer first, Mike, and then you can follow up. Chris Conway asks, "Do you think the LA Rams' success is to the detriment of Arsenal? If the Rams were less successful, do you think Kroenke would be more willing to invest?" The only reason I think the Rams being successful helps Arsenal is because winning things is great. And if Stan, and it's very likely the LA Rams could win the Super Bowl, Mike, if he sees the success that brings and winning is part of the model, then yeah, I think he will look to say, okay, well, Arsenal is actually my biggest portfolio sports team. I want to win with them as well. So winning breeds confidence, Mike. And so with the Rams doing better, I think it only helps Arsenal. Now, does them winning mean he's going to invest more? Probably not. We've already talked about that, but that's the only reason I see the Rams winning the Super Bowl is good for Arsenal. It's because he's going to want to win elsewhere.
I don't think it has anything to do with anything, honestly. And I think what it has to do with is that more people are going to get angry because apparently seeing Stan Kroenke on the sidelines for the Rams is an angering factor for Arsenal supporters. And I just, I mean, it's a reminder that we're not that important to Daddy. But other than that, I just don't think you understand.
It would be really nice if a statement did come out that just said, "Hey, I own Arsenal, but I don't care. This is Josh's pet project." You know, like Portsmouth were purchased by the ex-CEO of
Arsenal supporters would love hearing us referred to as a pet project.
Well, so Portsmouth were purchased by the ex-CEO of Disney, and the reason they brought him in was because he had a tenure of going into companies like ESPN, Disney that were popular companies, big brands, but not performing well. And he openly came out and said to the supporters, "This is for me and my sons to bond and build the program, build the facilities, build the team." And Mike, it's working. But he came out and was honest with the owners and said, "This is what we're going to do. We're not going to pump millions and millions in. This is going to be the model, and this is how we're going to run it. And I'm doing this with my sons. I'll be at games. They'll be at games. But it's going to be a multiple-headed monster that's going to create this club." I think Portsmouth fans appreciate that because you know where you are. So why can't we get that?
The communication, and this goes back to something Arseblog was saying, earlier on in this podcast, which is communication is key. And I wanted to keep interjecting when he was saying that to agree with him, but I didn't want to interrupt him. So, yeah, I mean, I thought we were getting transparency with our new people, with Unai Emery, who made such a push to learn English. I thought we were getting transparency with some of the struggles that we face, setting proper expectations. And then it all kind of turned around to where Unai Emery's starting to sound more and more like Arsene Wenger every week.
But what can you do when your hands are tied?
It's hard. I mean, I don't know what the correct answer is, but but he's right, Andrew, in saying that you know, some statement of direction. And I looked at the annual report for Arsenal yesterday because I was trying to figure something out about commercial revenues. And you know, in the annual report, not this past year's because we don't have to file them anymore, which sucks. But in the previous year's one, just about like what the strategy was with new players, and it was just so patronizing and low level. I think they need to do more for that. I really do. At this point, there needs to be an open letter saying, you know, here's what our short-term plan is, and here's what our long-term plan is. Whether we are successful in it or not depends on a lot of things, you know, some of which are outside of our control. But here's what we're trying to do, both on a play level and a team level. And that is sorely needed right now. And the lack of that is leading to people being left to their own devices, to blame lack of investment, to blame poor coaching and no plan, to blame players with no ambition and high salaries. And it's not helping anything. We're all just pointing at each other and pointing at things. It's miserable. So yeah, I think communication would help, and it would be kind of a breath of fresh air. I want to thank the chat room. We've had a higher than normal number of chat people in here. I know why that was, obviously, and we appreciate it. We're still kind of in the infancy of doing this. I apologize that I haven't kept up with some of the user questions that I solicited in there as well as I could. I got a lot of different stuff in front of me right now. So I want to thank you for that. I want to finish off with a couple things. Commercial revenues. I printed this out last night. The top 6 teams, the top commercial revenues, which are the things that presumably drive the ability to buy players and pay higher wages. Again, if you believe anything about short-term cost control, that's the thing that allows you to go over that $7 million a year growth. Manchester United, £276 million last year. Man City, £218 million, and that includes their inflated deals that they've been able to skate by with from Etihad. Liverpool, $136 million. Chelsea, $140 million. Arsenal, $90 million. Right there.
That is, Mike. Well,
it's because, and that's changing this summer because we are getting an extra $10 million out of the Emirates each year for the shirt. We're getting an extra, I think, 20 or 30 million out of a year out of Adidas. So that's about to go up a little bit.
But let me just say something.
But there's the gap between Man City and us, the gap between United and us on splashing cash.
But why has City all of a sudden leapfrogged over us in that revenue table? Because they win. So to the point of the LA Rams winning the Super Bowl, there's going to be a lot of commercial money that goes into that. So if you're KSE and you're sitting down at a boardroom and you look at all of your teams and you look at where this money's coming from, winning breeds bank account rule. Like winning breeds more money. So if you're Stan and the stadium's built and you start seeing that your liquid assets are increasing, the Rams have won a Super Bowl, you see money coming in, he turns around and says, okay, what do I need to invest to get us to that Man City level? And let's be honest, Mike, we're not that far away.
The problem is that Man City did their most of their debt investing, the ridiculous pouring money into the club and buying players that they couldn't really afford from expenses. They did that before the FFP rules came into play.
Oh, totally. They totally did.
And by the time, I believe 2012, 2013 is when those wage rules and the self-sustainability rules came into play. By then, they had already invested hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into players, and those players brought championships, which brought money, which brought the ability to value a stadium naming deal at £80 million a year, whereas Vitality probably pays $2 million a year for Bournemouth. I mean, they got lucky and they were smart with the rules that existed at the time, and now they don't have to be devious anymore. And unfortunately, we didn't do that. And we are playing by the rules, like it or not. I just don't know how much Stan cutting a check is going to make that difference. So, again, hope to be able to talk maybe a little bit more informed about that next week. We're going to cut it off now, unless you have anything else you would like to say.
I don't.
Hopefully, brighter days ahead. next Saturday, 12:30 Eastern, 5:30 UK, we have a game against Chelsea. Is that right? Is that this weekend?
Yeah, yeah, that is this weekend. I think City Wolves kicks off in a few minutes.
Oh, that's true. Well, we can see how much further behind the top two we're finding.
Hey, isn't it really like, okay, so here's my thing, right? With Liverpool and Man City, the run. City's actually a fun team to watch. They attack, they defend well, like just all around they're great. Liverpool just dive to get a penalty, and then and it's just like, come on.
Yeah,
it's atrocious.
If you have to pick, I know this is like a user question type of question. If you had to pick somebody to win the league other than us, City all day long, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's this cloak of like, well, I even though I don't think it's true anymore, the whole they bought the league type of thing, you can almost say, well, we had no chance as long as they were really in it to win it.
But if you look at like the history, like Liverpool, their fans keep going on about how great they've always been. Where I mean, for 20 years they were absolutely dog shit. Chelsea's the same way. They were always a massive club. Well, they weren't until Abramovich came in. Then you've got Tottenham, who continue to say like we're a massive club, and their fans keep saying that. The City fans know that they were dog shit years and years ago. They admit to that. They admit to the fact that their owner came in and spent way too much money. So it's like they're not, apart from the bandwagon fans, if you talk to someone who's actually like City for longer than 10 years.
Yeah, like a Stephen Ireland shirt.
Exactly. They are completely open to the fact that this has all happened, and they're embracing it. And it's like they're not pretending they're something they're not. They even know like their history is one of the worst in football. And they saw their team go to the absolute depths. And a lot of those fans stayed true to them. They didn't switch over and become Red Devils. So, yeah, for me, that's the reason why if City are going to win it, more power to them. They are the bar, And I don't think Liverpool win the league, Mike. I really think City will catch them, and it'll be tight, but I think City wins it.
I hope so. I can't take – I could even take Chelsea over either Liverpool or Tottenham at this point. As much as I hate that, and I'm going to make a prediction based on all of the books and
take second.
Oh my! No. I'm saying within the next 7 years, Chelsea finish bottom half of the table because they are going to their shit is going to come home to roost. Well, I think something's going to happen with Abramovich, and they are so far in debt to him that as soon as he doesn't own the team anymore,
there'll be another Leeds United. They will just.
They could be the one that and that's what you can say about Arsenal is, you know what, as annoying as this is to say it, they are not in a position where anything lower than maybe 7th or 8th is ever on the table because they'll just have good enough players.
But Mike, the problem with like
Chelsea could get relegated in the next 10 years if he leaves.
But possibly, and a very high chance, but Chelsea have that brand and have that infrastructure where an oil-rich sheik will come in and go, that debt doesn't even move my bank accounts. I'll buy it from Abramovich for $2 billion. I'm okay taking the $2 billion, $3 billion in debt that you have on the club, or hundreds of millions of pounds, and it doesn't move bank accounts. And so you just see the cycle happen, and that's the only way I see Chelsea surviving that, if it does happen, is that they have the brand and infrastructure already. But you look at the fact that they bought Morata for 57 when they could have had Lacazette, they could have had Aubameyang, and they're not replacing. I mean, essentially, Giroud has become their number one striker.
They have been transfer neutral in the last 5 or 6 years. As much, they've made some incredible sales for players that didn't really work out for them, and then they've got the whole the loan player farm that they have, which, as long as that's legal, they're doing a fucking smart thing right now. They're just doing player arbitrage with people that never have any opportunity to play for Chelsea, but if they buy them for 30,000 pounds and they sell them for 6 million, and you multiply that by 15 or 20, I mean, they're being smart there, but that's about the only thing they're doing smart. I could chat all day, but I can't. So it's going to be an interesting season. I think where we are right now is about where we're going to finish, 5th or 6th. I can't really see it getting any better than that, but people just need to be patient and let the boys do their thing. You know what I'm saying?
I think that we live in a world today, Mike, where the Arsenal social media blows things out of proportion. There has to be a scapegoat. Things are going to work out. When Unai Emery signed, everyone was over the moon. We were all happy. We were all saying we got to give him time. We got to give him 3 transfer windows. Where did that go? Where did that mentality go? Now it's the guy's not fit to be in the Arsenal.
Yeah, I don't see what's changed other than the fact that people are starting to see him like grasping for straws a little bit. But the
worst thing that happened for us this season was that unbeaten run.
Yeah, probably.
Because had we gone in, we lost the first 2 games, but we won the next 4, we lost 1, we won the next 4, we lost 1. We look at it and go, okay, we're not there yet. The guy needs time. But the fact we went 22, 23 unbeaten and we didn't play well, but we kept winning and it was miraculous, blah, blah, blah. That's the worst thing that could have happened to this season. And I wish Unai would have come out and kept reminding, hey, we're going to lose. Like every press conference, guys, we're going to lose. It's going to happen. Because Pep Guardiola did that last season, Mike. When they went on that 15-17 unbeaten in the league, he kept saying, we are going to lose some games. Prepare yourself. We are not perfect. And so when they did lose, he turned around and went, told you so. It was inevitable. It was coming.
Nah, I told you we're going to lose.
But you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
All right, man.
All right. Well, thanks to the chat. Thank you I see a lot of thumbs up. Please, if you haven't given us a thumbs up, please do. At any moment now, if you're watching this later on, you should see a subscribe here situation going on right over my shoulder. So
just do it.
Please just subscribe.
Just do it.
What the fuck? Just subscribe.
Just do it.
Yeah, do it. Do it. All right. Beyond that, thank you very much. Enjoy your weeks, and we will be back with a very uplifting podcast after Chelsea next week. Come on, you Gooners.
Probably not, though.
Come on, please. Come on, you motherfucking Gooners. Come on.